Praise be to the one true God, ar-Rahman, Lord of all realms of existence. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and may the grace of the Most High God be forever in your favor. Welcome to our continued exegetical analysis of Chapter 2 of the Quran, Surat al-Baqarah. In this video, we are going to be discussing verse 34 in the story of the appointment of man as God's representative on earth. Verse 34 in this story encapsulates a profound lesson about obedience, humility, submission, as well as the dire consequences of arrogance and disobedience to God's commandments. It serves as a reminder of the importance of surrendering to God's commands and the spiritual perils of pride and defiance. This verse not only recounts a pivotal moment in the narrative of creation, but also imparts enduring ethical and moral teachings unto man in his struggles on earth. In the previous couple of videos, we had discussed verses 30 to 33, where man is eventually appointed as God's representative on earth, as well as the angels' concerns about this appointment. The angels' concerns are said to be due to the fact that they foresaw man as creating disharmony on earth and shedding blood, whereas they did not have the propensity of committing such acts, and believed themselves to be better suited at upholding the balance that was established at moment of creation. God's reaction to the raised concerns of the angels serves as a reminder of his wisdom in everything that he does. He declares, "I know better of what you do not know." This response clearly shows that there was something special about man which the angels were overlooking, and that this specialness made man worthy of being appointed as God's representative, despite his propensity for great evil and tremendous harm. Verses 31 to 33 then go on to illustrate part of this specialness which the angels had overlooked. Herein, the angels' knowledge is put to the test in order to educate them on their limitations, despite them being so near and dear to God. Initially, they had thought that they had a firm grasp on God's creative prowess. However, through this test, it became clear to them that man is not only capable of naming things and acquiring language, but is also a learning creature, thereby foreshadowing man's unique ability to learn and reason through intellect, particularly his ability to learn from his mistakes and bettering himself. Verse 34 then shifts the narrative to yet another test which was offered to the angels, following their first encounter with Adam. In this narrative, the angels are commanded to do what the Quran refers to as Sujuud to Adam, which they all do, except for a creature named Iblis, who according to the verse sought to be arrogant and prideful, and thus became of the Kafirin. With that introduction out of the way, let us break down this verse and try and see what we can learn from it. Exegetical analysis of verse 34 of Surat al-Baqarah. In the name of the one true God, ar-Rahman, the merciful. And when we said to the angels, "Pay homage to Adam," so they paid homage, with the exception of Iblis. He refused and sought self-assertive pride and arrogance, for he was of the ungrateful. This verse, similar to verse 30, begins with the phrase, "and when," directed primarily to the prophet, instructing him to recount the incident when God commanded the angels to perform sujood to Adam, a phrase which is typically rendered as prostrate. The word sajada, meaning he made sujood, refers to being in a state of agreement, alignment, obeisance, or compliance to something. In this verse, the word sujood is contrasted with Iblis's actions, i.e., he refused and sought to be arrogant. From this, we understand sujood as the position one assumes when in agreement, obeisance, or compliance with an instruction or requirement. In chapter 13, verse 15, the Quran states, "And to God do those in the heavens and the earth perform sujood, willfully or unwillingly, and so do their shadows in the morning and the evening." Similarly, in chapter 16, verses 49 to 50, it reads, "Have they not looked at what God has created of anything, how its shadow sways from the right and the left, sujadan to God, while they are in a state of humility? For to God does whatever is in the heavens, and whatever is in the earth of creatures do sujood, and so do the angels, and they do not seek to be arrogant." We see in these verses that everything in the heavens and the earth performs sujood to God, including those within them. willfully or unwillingly, as well as their shadows. The emphasis on shadows is important as it gives a clue to the word's meaning. When we observe our shadows, they are in complete harmony with the objects casting them. Whether we move or stay still, our shadows follow our exact movements and gestures. This complete compliance and alignment of our shadows to our gestures is what the Quran refers to as being in a state of sujood. In some cases, this state is exemplified through physical movements or gestures like prostration, bowing, kneeling, saluting, or nodding of the head. In others, it is strictly limited to its inner meaning. When the shadow moves or sways with us from the right and the left, it does so out of sujadan to God, meaning in alignment, agreement, or compliance with what God commanded it to do. Thus, being in sujood to God implies being in harmony, alignment, or compliance with God's instructions. So when God commands the angels to do sujood to Adam, it implies that the angels were commanded to be in alignment or harmony with man, by serving man, looking out for him, and watching over him throughout his earthly journey, providing relief, reassurance, solace, peace, and consolation. The verse then informs us that the angels paid homage to man, with the exception of Iblis. The phrase illa, translated as with the exception, led some to suggest that Iblis might have been an angel, since the command to pay homage was given to the angels, and Iblis is mentioned as having refused. This raises the question, why does the Quran only mention the angels if the command was also given to other beings? This has led some to theorize that the term angels signifies all heavenly beings, of which there are different natures. However, this theory seems implausible, as in other verses recounting this incident, it is emphatically clear that all the angels did indeed pay homage to Adam. For example, chapter 38, verse 73 states, "So the angels paid homage, all of them collectively together, leaving absolutely no room for any angel to be in refusal." Similarly, in verse 50 of chapter 16, it says, "The angels do sujood and do not seek self-assertive pride or arrogance, contrary to what Iblis sought." Furthermore, we read in chapter 18, verse 50, that Iblis's violation was due to him being from among the jinn. This verse presents this as one of the reasons for his refusal and eventual rebellion against God's command. Herein, we learn that the jinn, unlike the angels, possess the propensity to disobey and revolt against God, whereas angels do not. Similar to humans, it would seem, the jinn appear to be beings that can fall prey to emotions such as jealousy, envy, and other material drives and needs, such as the need to be seen as great or superior. From this, we further understand that being in a state of sujood is contrary to seeking arrogance or self-assertive pride, the Arabic istikbar. Here, the meaning of sujood becomes even clearer, as it refers to being low or lower in importance, value, or esteem, and being humble and free from self-assertive pride. It also refers to having a low rank in the hierarchy of worthiness. Putting these formulations together helps us draw an image of what led to Iblis's refusal to pay homage to Adam. The verse phrases this declination by stating, "He, Iblis, refused and sought greatness, arrogance, or self-assertive pride, wa istakbara," meaning he attempted to be greater than he was, instead of succumbing to what he was meant to do, which was to be in a state of sujood to Adam, just like the angels. In chapter 38, verses 71 to 72, the story of the creation of man is recounted in the following way. "When thy Lord, O Prophet, said to the angels, I am surely going to create a mortal being from clay. When I have then aligned and proportioned him, and have breathed into him of my spirit, you are then to fall down in homage to him." In this rendition, prior to the creation of man, the nature of his creation was initially informed to the angels by God, and that God was going to align and proportion him, and when he had breathed of his spirit into him, only then were the angels supposed to pay homage to him. Thus, from this we can understand that the reason for why the angels were commanded to pay homage to Adam was because he contained within him of God's spirit, and this is what made him special. It was this part of man, i.e., part of God's Spirit, that the angels were essentially paying homage to. It was not the mere husk that man was, rather it was the divine spark which God breathed into man. In chapter 32, verses 6 to 9, we read the following: "The one who made everything that he created wonderful and beautiful. Here in particular, he began the creation of the human being from clay. Then he made his progeny from an extract of a putrid fluid. Then he proportioned and aligned him, and he breathed into him of his spirit. And he assigned for you hearing, sight, and minds. Little it is that you are appreciative." In these verses, the creation of man is said to have been begun from clay, i.e., the initial state. Then after a long time had lapsed, this initial creature evolved to a state where its progeny were created from an extract of a putrid fluid. Then, when some time had lapsed, God proportioned it and aligned it according to his specificities, and he breathed into it of his spirit, thereby making it capable of hearing, sight, and thinking. It should be kept in mind here that Adam is not said to have been the initial state of man, since the angels were only commanded to do sujood to the mortal being after God had breathed into him of his spirit, which only happens after this mortal being's progenies are made from an extract of a putrid fluid, and after he becomes proportioned and aligned. Observing this timeline, we can deduct that the proportioning and alignment came after the making of the progeny. The meaning of proportioning or bringing to alignment here refers to bringing man to his complete state. Thus, only when he was brought to his complete state did God simultaneously breathe into him of his spirit, thereby making him hearing, insightful, and thinking. At this point, the angels were then commanded to pay homage to Adam. In chapter 7, verse 11, the Quran declares, "We certainly did in fact create you, and then we shaped you, and then we said to the angels, pay homage to Adam." This verse echoes somewhat the same sentiment as previously discussed. In other words, human beings were created, and then they were shaped and formed, and then the angels were commanded to pay homage to Adam. Note, the homage is paid to Adam, and not to all of the human beings in this verse. The reason for this time lapse is due to the usage of the term thumma, which is an Arabic term that the Quran employs when it wants to convey a timeline jump between sequences. When the sequences are closely tied and follow right after the other, it employs the term fa, also meaning then. Iblis's failing lies in his inability to recognize the divine spark in man, a spark which made man capable of hearing, being insightful, and thinking. In the verse, Iblis is said to have refused and instead opted for arrogance and self-assertive pride. In other words, he assumed that due to him being created from fire, he was greater than Adam, who had been created from clay. In chapter 7, verse 12, when God inquired of Iblis why he did not pay homage when he had been commanded, he, Iblis, responded, "I am better than him. Thou created me from fire, whereas thou created him from clay." This verse not only shows the root of Iblis' deep-seated inferiority complex, but also shows that God had in fact commanded him to pay homage to Adam, just as the angels had been commanded. It was this psychological condition which led to Iblis feeling inadequate and insecure, leading to an overcompensation whereby he attempted to mask his feelings of inferiority. His refusal stemmed from arrogance and a sense of superiority over Adam, as he believed he was created from a superior substance, i.e., fire, compared to Adam, who had been created from clay. Iblis placed the reason for his refusal on the physical aspect of man, thinking it was that which had made man special. However, this was far from the truth, as it was the divine spark within man that Iblis was commanded to be in alignment with. This reaction can be seen as an overcompensation for an underlying inferiority complex. Despite his privileged position among the angels, Iblis might have felt threatened by Adam's creation and the honor bestowed upon him, which could have triggered feelings of inadequacy and insecurity that he had kept hidden all along. In one of the verses that we discussed in the previous video, i.e. verse 33, we saw that when Adam had informed the angels of the names, God retorted by saying, "Did I not say to you that I am better knowing of the hidden mysteries of the heavens and the earth, and that I know better what you reveal? and what you had been concealing? The final sentence in this retort suggests that the angels, as well as Iblis, had been concealing something which they did not want to be disclosed. And it can be argued that in Iblis, it had been this feeling of inadequacy and insecurity. Since Iblis is clearly mentioned in the narrative as having been encompassed by the command to pay homage to Adam, we cannot disregard the possibility that he too was present when God tested the angels about their knowledge regarding the entities which he had set before them. It is highly possible that when God asked the angels to inform him of their names, that Iblis too was just as dumbfounded about the names of the entities as the angels were. If Iblis likewise could not respond to the inquiry, then we can deduce that this must have infuriated him, especially when he saw that Adam was able to respond correctly, despite Iblis thinking so little of him. In psychological terms, Iblis's arrogance and disobedience can be interpreted as a defense mechanism. By refusing to pay homage and asserting his superiority, he attempted to bolster his self-worth and mask his perceived inferiority. His insistence on his own superiority and his subsequent actions illustrate how an inferiority complex can manifest as arrogance and rebellion. This narrative highlights the destructive consequences of such a complex. Instead of accepting his role and submitting to God's command, Iblis's inferiority complex led to his downfall, transforming him from a respected being into one of the ungrateful, i.e., the kafirin. This story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of allowing feelings of inferiority to dictate one's actions, and the importance of humility and obedience to higher authority. Iblis's disobedience is a manifestation of his ingratitude. Despite his privileged position among the angels and the many blessings bestowed upon him, he failed to recognize and appreciate God's authority and wisdom. Instead of submitting to God's command, he allowed his arrogance and sense of superiority to dominate his actions, leading him to refuse paying homage to Adam. This refusal was not just a simple act of disobedience, but a profound rejection of God's will and wisdom. The use of the word kafirin in this verse is significant because it underscores the gravity of Iblis's actions. In the Quran, kufr is not about denying the existence of God, but about acting in opposition to his commands, despite knowing the truthfulness, value, and sanctity of them. It is about failing to acknowledge or appreciate God's bounties by cognitively employing them in opposition to their intended purpose. Iblis's ungratefulness is thus twofold. He is ungrateful for his own creation and the position he held, and he is ungrateful for the divine wisdom and justice in God's command. His story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of gratitude, humility, and obedience to God's will, highlighting the severe consequences of ingratitude and arrogance. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And as always, may the grace of God continue to forever be in your favor.